Okay, well, welcome. This is a new live streaming setup that I have going on here, and I'm gonna need a moment of your time and presumably a little bit of your patience as well to get everything buttoned up. Um, this whole thing has been a little bit of a project, if I'm being honest, and so I'm basically back in the day, I used to have a handful of cameras that I was using for, um, let's see, quality wise, higher picture quality. Where can we go? Okay. Interesting. Okay, sorry. I am trying to basically I set this up with the idea in mind that this slightly more advanced setup would enable me to stream in 4K. I don't think that this is currently putting out 4K video, so if any of you guys are able to kind of dig around in there a little bit and let me know in terms of what sort of output that we're getting, that would be helpful. Also, in terms of the audio, just kind of how things are sounding, that would be useful as well. This has been a little bit of a process. I've been playing with this, and last night I did a kind of a brief live stream, and I was able to get it to put out 4K, and then I used the same settings today, and now it doesn't want to go higher than 1080. So that's kind of where we're at. So I'm going to try to deal with this as good as I can, and I guess we'll go from there. So I saw we had a couple of people in here at least earlier. I'm not sure who all we have right now. Yeah, so one of the things that is a little challenging about this setup is that I am not right by the computer. So previously I was using the computer, built-in camera, and using a wireless mic to record. The audio quality I thought was pretty decent. I'm not a huge audio snob, but I figured I would give it a whirl. The main thing I really wanted to see if I could do was to try to improve the picture a little bit, because I have a handful of folks that are watching on television as opposed to just, when everybody watches on a smartphone, the screen's as big as not a huge screen. And so the resolution doesn't really, matter a ton. But when you're on a television screen, being able to have higher resolution can be helpful. So I figured, okay, I'm going to pull out of retirement one of my old cameras, a Lumix GH5, has full 4K. It can do 4K, streaming and all that jazz, got everything set up. And Secret Noise Pictures, good evening to you. I see you there in the chat. So it's kind of forced me to reconfigure my space a little bit and to try to figure some things out. So, yeah, as I was starting to say just a moment ago there, Secret Noise, if you are able to, I'm pretty sure that this is not putting out 4K, but I don't know if you're getting 4K on your end, or if we're kind of topped out at, standard HD. Also, just trying to get a little feedback on the audio, and then we can kind of dig into some of the. Although I think just from what I can see a little bit of the audio metering on the computer. This is very much a uncomfortable and new setup and kind of thrown together, so I'm a little out of sorts here. Not the way I would have opted to have everything go. And ultimately, this may be a process where I have to take a couple of swings at it to get it right. And a little bit of improvement in the picture quality, theoretically, because I don't think that we're actually putting out 4K right now anyhow. So a theoretical someday improvement in picture quality, but with all of the downsides, I don't know if that's going to work. So we'll have to play that by ear. What I wanted to talk about tonight, relatively briefly, because this isn't going to be a marathon stream like my usual endeavors, the Friday night streams. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to be collaborating, doing a guest stream with a gentleman from South Carolina named Zeb Boykin. His channel is actually related more towards social and political stuff more so than farming, but I discovered his channel kind of right around the time that the Charlie Kirk incident took place, and I really liked the fact that this guy was, he was kind of giving some analysis on ballistics and stuff like that, but generally speaking, I like the cut of his jib, and I was excited about being able to kind of do a little collaboration with him, because on his channel he was talking about some of the social things going on in our country, and some of the political frustrations that I think a lot of people have, myself included. And we kind of I was kind of throwing around some of the ways in which farming is, I think, very beneficial to all of those things, because voting in different people and kind of trying to play the political system from the top down, I don't think is the way to do it. And people have been doing that for quite a while. And, everybody, myself included, enjoys the WWE spectacle of, people, national politics, right? Presidential elections and all that stuff. It's somewhat entertaining, albeit frustrating. And at the end of the day, even if your person gets in, regardless which way, if you're a Democrat and you like Biden, he didn't really get that much done to benefit any of the things that you most likely voted for. Obviously, I think I am not a person who falls into that latter category. But, even when in 2016, when Trump was at least making some attempt to pretend that he was going to stick to the principles that he ran on during the campaign, he kind of got hamstrung by everybody underneath him. And then it was like, well, too bad, guys. At least I, gave you the jab, and, that was a great achievement. And he pats himself on the back so much that he throws his shoulder out with that stuff. That's somewhat of a side issue, I suppose, on my part. But the point is, regardless which way you see things, in that exchange, you're not getting what you really want. Nobody is. And I argue that a lot of the reason for that is the fact that we have, you can't, like, if you have a house that is rotted out and you need to redo it, you have to redo it from the ground up. You can't say, oh, the house is, demolished or termites ate everything out. Let's start by redo the whole thing. And we're going to start by putting on a new roof, right? You can't do it that way. That's not going to work. That's going to be just a problem. So I think the same thing goes with the political system, is like, we need grassroots local stuff. And I think one of the best ways to accomplish that and to start thinking in that direction and to get the feel for a lot of those local issues and the local positions and the opportunities to establish some coherence and some integrity on a local level, farming is part of that. And as I touch on relatively frequently in the videos that I make, I'm doing this because I want to make America farmers again. And that means more than just getting people to raise animals and maybe some crops and a garden here and there, although that certainly is a manifestation of it, but it has to do with really rebuilding the culture of America. And I think the culture of America was at its apex, again, not perfect, but at its best during the time when America was principally centered on, or at the foundation of America's culture, was family farms, homesteads, and where there was a direct connection to the land, literally, not just, hey, this is my land, I can build a thing on it and then, rent it to somebody who hates me and hates my country and hates my, what I stand for, but where the land was a thing that you fed yourself and your family with, and it was very personal. Bellino's Bounty says, my video quality is capping at 1080, but the audio sounds great. Thank you. That is good to know. Yeah, I got to figure out, and it might wind up meaning that I'm going to have to do a few test drives here to get the video to do what I actually want it to do, which is put out 4K. Now, I know that this is a tough question. This is related to the audio geekery. Are you able to tell any difference or improvement in the audio? Because like the mic that I've been using on previous live streams, and I guess maybe I could just go back and listen to the last live stream and compare it to this on my own instead of wasting everyone else's time. But I'm just curious because for this, I'm using an actual Rode Procaster, which is in the world of audio, it's a relatively high-end mic that is supposed to be high performing. At the end of the day, the lav mics that I had been using in previous videos, it's been pretty darn good. But at the same time, I watch podcasts and everybody's got their Rode microphone. I'll just for sake of the camera, everybody's got their Rode microphone on the little, the swing arm, and they swing it around and they play with it and fiddle with it every now and then, and it kind of makes it's very official. And I started thinking, man, I have a mic like that when I used to do podcasts. It would be cool. I should bring that in here and see if I can make the audio a little bit better. But end of the day, this might just be something that is more of a hassle than it's actually worth at this point in time. So you guys can tell me what you think about that. Secret noise picture. Sorry, I got to read these messages off of my phone where I'm monitoring the chat because the screen is back behind the camera, and then I'm like looking over top of the camera, and the whole thing is just too weird. Secret Noise says, I think we control more than people realize. What happens in the White House does not affect how I control my house. Amen. We can make America farmers again by realizing our own responsibilities that we can control. And that right there is exactly the heart of kind of what I'm doing. And some of you may have noticed we got 5 people in the chat here. So, and by the way, if there's anybody in the chat that I have not yet met, I'm Stephen Reichert. This is Rowan Ridge Farm. I actually am experimenting with a new display name, which is Bacon Cheeseburger Nationalist. Partly because it's a little bit politically suggestive and edgy, and I think might open the door for conversations that would go beyond just the layout of my barn that also tie into farming. But the cheeseburger, and in tomorrow's podcast that I am going to be collaborating with Zeb Boykin, and I'm going to link all of that stuff to I think we're going to try to co-stream or simulcast or whatever it's called at the same time. So I will, but one way or the other, whether I have to repost his video or do something silly so that we can both be streaming at the same time, it's going to be on here tomorrow, and I expect that that's going to be a little more political, and we're going to dig into some of this stuff. But one of the things that I became aware of is like the bacon cheeseburger is a uniquely American thing that is a icon of abundance. And it kind of came about in the post-World War II era from diner culture, and the philosophical bent of a bacon cheeseburger is the fact that it represents both dairy, beef, and pork, which is like 3 entirely separate sources of protein that is like extravagant abundance that is iconic of the American farmer when you really get down to grassroots. And what I want to do is revitalize and rebuild American culture by doing my part to encourage, both in my environment here, what I can affect, but also encouraging other people who have lost faith in a political system where I think the political system, it's so far downstream. It's like trying to fix a pipe without shutting off the water first. Because if you shut off the water upstream, that pipe isn't going to fix itself, but it's going to be much, much easier to then go in and put a little bit of, whatever people use to fix pipes, duct tape. No, I've used other stuff to fix pipes beside that. I'm not a complete bozo. But whatever you're going to do, whatever your proposed solution is for fixing the pipe, you have to start with going upstream. And I think that's kind of Secret Noise, what you were talking about or what you're referencing there. And I completely agree with that. And I want to encourage that and inspire that, not just by saying, talking politics, because there's many influencers and we have a culture of people going on YouTube and talking. And regardless who you like to listen to, I mean, I kind of listen to everybody, whether I agree or disagree. I have listened to the neocons, the Ben Shapiros, the Tim Pools. I don't listen to Tim Pool anymore because I'm kind of upset with Timmy. I listen to some Candace Owens. I listen to some Breaking Points and what's that Sam Cedar and they're a bunch of crazy lefties, Young Turks. I listen to a little bit of Piers Morgan when I want a little bit of WWE stuff and people yelling at each other. I listen to the red pill guys with occasionally Andrew Tate. I don't really have much use for him, but I listened to a little bit of his stuff here and there. Myron Gaines, Nick Fuentes. Obviously, when these guys come up in the news, there's more of that or less of that. And end of the day, I don't really put much stock in what a lot of these guys say because their occupation is saying stuff. Like they could literally say anything and people would just be like, oh, that's cool. And either, I agree and I think you're awesome. And, here's a bunch of money that you can take in my super chats and then I'm going to insult you. They're going to insult me. And I'm going to this humiliation ritual that I get some kind of satisfaction out of and whatever. But these aren't really people who have done anything or built anything in the real world. And so their ideas, they're not hardened off. It's, to bring it back to pigs and farming, it's kind of like buying a show pig that has been raised in like a barn and then saying, okay, I'm got to put this out on the pasture and I got to make some, good quality protein for my family and for my customers. And then it doesn't work out on a variety of different levels. And it's because, well, this is an animal that's never been hardened off to the real world that you need your animals to perform in. And that's the pattern that we're modeling is we're just taking these ideas from people who don't do anything other than this. And the people who are out in the world doing the real stuff, right? The actual nuts and bolts, the farm work, the construction, the building, all of that stuff that really tests the ideas that are being talked about on here. Those people are not being heard. They're not being listened to. They're not being represented. And I think some of that is just coincidental function. I don't know that it's like some big scheme to prevent people who, from being on the air. It's not all like a censorship scam. Although I think there is some of that in play. That's another conversation maybe for another time. But end of the day, there's got to be some drop testing and there's got to be some real world momentum behind these ideas, and farming is part of that. I don't know that it's the entire picture, but kind of like I got into a little bit on my last episode, my last stream, which was super long. Like I'm thinking about the video that I recorded that I have not yet edited that I'm going to work on. That's going to be about making money on a small farm in 2026 and some ideas and principles, philosophies to keep in mind in order to really make that jump from small homestead to small farm, to make that jump successfully. Because that's a jump that I made, I would say overall successfully, but not without a few dings and scratches that I would like to help you guys learn from. But end of the day, what we're doing with farming, you're not doing it to make a bunch of money. You're not saving. I mean, you might have talked your girlfriend or your wife into having animals and getting a farm because, babe, listen, we're going to save all this money. Think about how much our grocery bill is. The prices are going up. Look, we can double that. And we got all the savings. We're going to trust me, it's going to be great. And then you actually start raising the animals and you're like, okay, I can't factor in my time to any of the financial equation because morale would just go completely overboard if I were to do that. So dollars for donuts, not counting time, we're almost breaking even, right? As long as we don't screw anything up. And then if you do, well, it becomes a real expensive pound of bacon or dozen eggs or package of, beef ribs or hamburger. And so if we're not making money off of this, there's got to be a deeper reason to do it. And I think part of that is like we've lost the plot as a nation. We've lost the plot. Like young men specifically, it's funny. I don't know when it happened, but I kind of went from being young men and we blah blah blah, and now I'm like young men and you blah blah blah, because like when I cut my hair, I look a little bit younger, but now I'm like I'm crossing over into the great divide of like old guyhood. And Bellino's Bounty says 100% agree. I think meant to Steve. It really is up to us to do the work and lead by example. Yeah. And that's the thing. And when you look at a lot of these guys, whether they're on the left or the right, really what they do is they complain about stuff. And a lot of what they complain about, I think on both sides, there's some legitimate complaints. And their job is basically to be a lightning rod so that other people's discomfort has a place to go other than out into the streets or, maybe in a positive direction where that discomfort or unhappiness with the situation leads to making change and actually, doing things differently. And I always go back to the Amish. I understand that people are very, down on the whole, what we have going on in our country, and the political system has largely failed. I mean, I know growing up in the 90s, it was like, you just gotta do your thing and make sure you vote. And if you vote, that you're participating in democracy and everything's going to be fine. And I voted and we can feel good and don't worry about it. It's, check is in the mail. And then now it's just kind of like the whole thing is a joke. And a lot of people are just like, oh, well, all hope is lost. And I don't feel like all hope is lost. I think that all hope in political betters or political superiors, yeah, that's lost because, that hasn't gotten us anywhere. And so that leads us to the next idea of like, okay, well, what if we went completely the opposite direction and we did something that was very different from what is being tried right now? And as I started to say a moment ago, the Amish always, the Amish are somewhat of an inspiration to me. Oh, I see Rob 360. One of my oldest and best friends. Hope is poison for the soul. Well, that's spoken. I'll show you You want to see some patronization? I'll show you that. No, I think that I think you have to have enough hope. Otherwise you give up. Right. And I think if what you're doing isn't working, I think it's incumbent upon us to find a new thing to try, because how much of, I can tell you a lot of what I've done with my animals and what has been the difference between surviving in this business. And again, I am small potatoes here, but the difference between surviving in this business, in this industry with raising animals and farming, and not surviving is like seeing that something isn't working, trying something different, and recognizing that it's time to try something different before you're too far down the hill to be able to stop the snowball. And I think that, there's still things that haven't really been tried, that haven't really been fully exhausted. And I think kind of what we're discussing here and what, Secret Noise and Bellino mentioned about really trying to engage ourselves and do the work, it's not necessarily a universal solution. but at the same time, it starts to build a framework that others can see that you're building a better mousetrap. And rather than kind of spiraling downhill in hopelessness, I think that having the ability to say, you know what, let's try something different. And again, as I was starting to say like 5 times ago, hey, Lightfoot is in here. Hey, good to see you in here. Yeah, I think that the Amish have always been very inspiring to me because this is a group of people you never hear any grievance. And they've been kicked out of countries, they've been persecuted, they've been, back in the day, they've had their massacres and violence against them. They've had all the stuff, but they're a group of people that their philosophy is like, we're going to stick to the plan and we're going to maintain our culture and we're going to be self-sufficient. And their answer to the degeneracy and the breakdown of society around them is we just disconnect. Like we build our own and we disconnect. And as much as possible, we try to just stay separate. Now, my point in saying that is not necessarily to suggest that we're going to all become secular Amish and we can like all have our own little individual kingdoms, as much as it is to say that there are the point is just to say that there are cultural changes that can be affected by people who are of a similar mindset and willing to do the work and put in the effort and build the community on a local level. And when you have that control on a local level, you are able to exercise a ton more, like I think Secret Noise Picture said earlier, you can exercise a tremendous amount of control over that domain on a local level if you're fully engaged and you have others in your community that are also engaged towards those ends, that ultimately winds up giving you a lot more bang for your buck and control over your culture on a small scale. But everybody is black-pilled and hopeless because they're looking at things going on nationally and they're listening to soft-handed podcasters complaining about the way things are and nobody's actually doing anything. So that's kind of my little treatise and some of my rationale behind the branding, the difference in the branding of the Bacon Cheeseburger Nationalism here. I am experimenting with this because I think it's a little more catchy than Rowan Ridge Farm, although I am still like Rowan Ridge Farm is the mechanism through which I am exercising Bacon Cheeseburger Nationalism and trying to move that idea down the field. And it's a little bit funny. It's a little bit edgy. It's going to get, we'll see where it goes, but it's something that I'm dabbling with here. And I'm looking forward to the podcast tomorrow that I'm going to do with Zeb and compare some ideas with him because I know, it's like regionally everything is very different in the way that people get into farming, the way the society is and culture and different people, different generations. The whole thing it's going to be interesting, but I want to have a chance to put my oar in the water and explain kind of where I've been coming from. And honestly, it's funny. I asked my wife about everything that I do because it's like, I know she's got a different perspective. And so there are some times when if I'm about to do something, I'm like, is this a dumb idea? Like, how does this just kind of gut feeling? How does this hit you? And I kind of ran the cheeseburger nationalist thing past her and she was like, I like it. She's like, it's not a deviation from who you are. It's just a better explanation of who you have always been. And I'm like, yeah, I think that's kind of fair. It's right on the nose. It just says this is kind of who I am and what I am in favor of and what I'm kind of been pushing here. And obviously the protein and the Americanism of that dish, that food item is certainly part of that as well. Hello, Mike. Your pigs are still doing good over here. Well, I guess they're my pigs now, right? But they're my problem. No, they're being good and they're doing fine. It's going to be interesting. We got the Snowmageddon or whatever. We got like 9-ish inches of snow Sunday, Monday, and then like Saturday, Sunday, we got just ridiculously low temperatures. And it's funny because I'm doing the podcast tomorrow with Zeb, who's in North Carolina, and he hates the cold. So we're going to have to compare notes a little bit about what cold really means. Because to me, I'm looking at the temperatures and there's videos all over YouTube and everybody's like, oh my goodness, the world's coming to an end and get ready for, Ian Carroll's making videos about get ready for the Arctic blast. I mean, what was it a couple of years ago? They had some name for it, some Arctic something or other. Maybe it was Snowmageddon. I forget. Somebody can put this in the chat or in a comment if you're watching this later. Whatever it was, the tundra. I don't know. I'm old. I can't remember things. I'm over the hill. Sorry, guys. But we had one of these not that long ago, and it turned out to not be that big of a deal. And like we're talking about getting down to like -6, -8 here. The funny thing is, and I don't know if this sets anybody else's mind at ease, but one of the things that I have found, because I lived in Alaska in the interior near Delta Junction, is about like 250 miles or so from the Arctic Circle. And in the wintertime, it would get down to -20. Well, it would get down to like -50 and -60. It got down to polar vortex. Thank you, Mr. Lightfoot. Polar vortex. It was like right on the tip of my tongue, but I was just like trapped in the brain flatulence that I am afflicted with from time to time. But we would go outside for PE as long as it was warmer than -20, and like sweatpants and sweatshirt. And, you wear like, they call it a buff, like the kind of a fleece thing that goes around your face so that you're not sucking in super cold air all the time. You could kind of trap some. And I ran, and I'm not a runner. I hate running and running hates me. And back when I actually ran, I ran a 5:59, the fastest mile I ever cared to run. But I did that in like -15, and it's weird. Like you think it's going to be that terrible, but like once you adjust to it, it's not that bad. The funny thing is that like cold is cold. Like speaking for myself, and maybe I'm some kind of a numbskull, but I can't tell the difference between -20 and -70 because cold is cold at that temperature. The difference between -20 and -70 is how quickly you arrive at the point of being cold. If you just go out and stand there, pretty much anything when you get to the point of feeling like your nostril hair like start to get icicles on it when you breathe in, and that condensation in your nose freezes, it's like, okay, it's cold. And then the question is like, how long do I have until the rest of me is cold if I just stand here and hang out? But it all kind of feels the same. So that's my impression, and you may or may not agree with that. A couple of comments here. The Amish have saved local communities, economies in many ways, and we could copy that by doing our best to engage locally and educating our members on local economy cycles. Totally agree with this. And, I have some friends here, and it's funny because through the small farming, I've made friends with local vendors who have small stores, like little farm stores, Airbnbs. One fellow reopened an old like town store, and there's, and even like local pork producers. There's a lot of people who are involved in this, and I think, of course, that leads to the next thing, which is getting the USDA off of our back, at least on a state level, so that we can, sell the meat directly to other people here. That's going to help too. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of momentum. Once you start getting into that community, there's more and more and more people that want to participate in that and that are looking for a way. And the more you scale up and the more people you have participating in that local economy with the food, the more viable it gets and the more economical you can be, because you have a lot more momentum and a lot less inertia as you move forward. Okay, Secret Noise says, if you don't want a housing development on the forested hill, buy pork from me, because then that hill has local value to stay a forested hill. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's unfortunate that one of the things that the way that we interpret value and land. And I think that part of what we have lost is like we have kind of we have cultural dysfunction. Our connection to the land is not that we eat off of this land and that this land feeds us and our neighbors and our community, and that we have our hands in the dirt on this land, and that when we got to this piece of land, like I look at my pasture, I've been here 5 years, but I've ran a hell of a bunch of pigs through there, and it looks way different and way better. And it's like, I'm working on it and I'm excited for the spring because I've put a lot of work into that in 5 years. And so and I could sell this place for twice what I paid for it, or am paying for it. Certainly, I did not pay it off in 5 years. I'm nowhere close. That's going to be, the 50-year mortgage is a really great thing. Huge fan of that. I'm kind of kidding about that, tongue in cheek. Like, I am not in a 50-year mortgage, but just had to use that reference. But to be able to show other people, show the community that there is significant value and connection and something going on with the land that we have, other than just like put a fence around it, put up posted signs, tell everybody to get the hell out, and then put up apartment complexes or storage units. There's better ways and better opportunities. And I think to a certain extent, I will pull out a black pill here real quickly and say that I think that there is a extent to which I think a lot of laypersons are going to reject a lot of this kind of secular Amish talk. I'm not secular myself, but I'm trying to present it at a very base level where even people who are secular can embrace the components of the Amish way, to make it a little bit of a broader appeal. But I think for a lot of people, the bottom has to fall out completely. And I think without us trying, I think that's where things are obviously headed. And so the more we can build community in a way that is, it builds integrity between us and in our localities, it gives us a little bit more ability to absorb shock when those shocks inevitably come. And then as those shocks inevitably come, I believe that having resources in abundance, and obviously with that, the ability to protect and to safeguard those things so that some level of etiquette and decorum is maintained with the community at large, the public, I think that people are going to start to see. And I hope that, there's enough time for enough of us to do enough to be able to move the ball down the field so that we can help more people than we have to turn away. But time will tell. But still, it's a hell of a lot better than doing nothing and just complaining. I mean, I enjoy the complaining, don't get me wrong. Like, regardless who it is, like, I like listening to these bozos rant about stuff on YouTube while I'm in the barn. It's entertaining, but I'm also not afraid of whatever is coming because of the fact that it's like I know that I'm doing all that I can. And if I do everything that I can and the bottom falls out beyond what I can control, then, it might be really awful, but at least I can accept it and deal with it and move past it without being kind of beating myself up. I can put my focus and my effort into improving the circumstances. And that's kind of where I'm at. Let's see. And Lollybell says, I lived in Kotzebue, I hope I'm pronouncing that, Alaska. Interesting. That, I don't know where that is. I know Delta Junction. I know Anchorage, Fairbanks, Tok, Alaska. I know that area. But hi, Shiki. Oh, boy. We got the gang coming in. Yeah, huh? What's happening? Hello, girls. What's up? Oh, this is cool. Thank you. It's I'm trying out a new setup for my videos. Okay. That's a microphone. So that's how I'm able to talk to the folks, my friends that are watching the stream. Okay, sweetie pie. Listen, I'll explain this to you later. We've already established that, like, one of the things I've been running into with my my biggest little daughter is that, she wants to ask questions about everything, and she's got all these, like, what's this, what's that? And, like, I constantly have to explain to her that the terms, like, she asked me about one thing, and then the terms that I'm using to explain that thing, I have to explain those terms to explain the other thing. And, I'm trying to be patient. And sometimes I am. So, yeah, there's room for improvement. But anyways, the whole stream, I apologize because I kind of got derailed here talking about political stuff with the Bacon Cheeseburger Nationalism. And I've got plenty more to say about that, certainly. But in terms of the bacon, I am kind of going to wind the stream down at this point because my wife has cut me a little bit of slack by giving me some more or less time here to be able to conduct this tonight. And I'm going to be streaming tomorrow around noon. As I mentioned, some of you guys have been in here a little bit. You've heard this, but I'll repeat it just in case if there's anybody in here new. I'm going to be streaming at 12 noon with Zeb Boykin from South Carolina. It's going to be a very interesting show and probably more or less along some of the lines. We're going to be talking about a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about here with you guys. Who's here? Is that Ian? Yes, it is. Good evening, Ian. Welcome. But the reason why I wanted to bring up the bacon was not just in clarification of my Bacon Cheeseburger Nationalist kind of branding, if you will, for the channel, but was also actually to talk about something that, for whatever reason, these things happen like a decade ago, and then they get recycled in the news feed, and basically the World Health Organization has basically upgraded the threat level that bacon represents in terms of a causal link to different types of cancer. And this was actually something that I was going to do a video about, just to kind of rant a little bit about, a lot of times I'll have somebody ask me, like, when we start divvying up their pig and I'm selling pork and we're talking about bacon, and it's like, oh, hold on a second. Is that nitrate-free bacon, or are there nitrates in there? Like, what's the, and they get real concerned about the nitrates. Having made a decent amount of bacon, both with the celery juice powder, which is what the no nitrates added. It's not nitrate-free or nitrite-free. It is no nitrates added. So celery juice powder, which is the alternative cure that just makes uglier-looking bacon, and still has pretty much the same amount of nitrates in it, maybe a little bit less, but they're naturally occurring nitrates instead of ones that are chemically added in there. And so that makes people feel a little bit better about that fact, and people will sell bacon as though this is a completely different operation, and this is completely different health implications of eating nitrate free or nitrate reduced, and there's a lot of deceptive language around the marketing of products when we're talking about things that come off of small farms, and that always kind of gets to me a little bit because it feels pretentious when people really start getting wrapped around the axle about that. And so I was doing a little bit of research, and really the issue with bacon is not the bacon, and it's not even necessarily the nitrates in the bacon or in the cure. It is nitrosamines, and I'm not a chemist, so I'm going to be real upfront with that. You'll probably figure that out quickly as I discuss this, but basically it's a chemical compound that happens when bacon becomes charred and it's blackened and crispy. Now, different people have different opinions on the way that bacon should be eaten. I like bacon in certain contexts. I'm not a big bacon guy. I know. I like bacon, and I like what bacon represents, because if you get it right, it's awesome. But bacon to me is not a food unto itself that I'm crazy about. It's more of it's an adjunct food. Like if you're making a soup, or you're making a stew, or you're making chili, although my wife always complains when I put bacon in the chili, so I don't get to do that much. I try to, when I'm making a dish for the family, I'm going to do what everybody else wants. But sorry, babe, just had to be real about that for a second. But like bacon isn't something where I'm crazy about sitting down and eating that. Holy cow. Rob 360, don't forget to eat your cat food. Oh my goodness. You know, the funny thing is, Rob and I have driven across country. Thank you, Rob. That's wonderful. I really appreciate that. That's very, very touching. It's when, you know, you get a you sent it twice, bud. I feel like the IRS here. I'm scalping you. I can, if you didn't mean to send that second one, let me know when we get off, and I can make sure you get that back. But either way, I appreciate it very much, especially because Rob has been my partner through many creative endeavors. Back when I was climbing, when I used to live in Zion National Park, and started climbing out there as an East Coaster, trying to figure out how to conduct oneself in the backcountry of the desert, and got lost halfway up. Was it Lady Mountain there? Actually got lost coming down Lady Mountain, got cliffed out, and almost, well, I stopped. I realized, okay, I cliffed out because like you're going up this mountain and then everything looks one way coming up, but when you're climbing something, like going up looks very different from going down. And this is probably about 1,000 feet of elevation. It wasn't all dead vertical. There were a few dead vertical sections in it, but most of it was steep enough where if you fell, you'd bounce a few times, but ultimately, if you fell, you more or less probably wouldn't stop until you descended real quickly, probably 800 to 900 feet, somewhere in that neighborhood, if memory serves. And so coming down, it was starting to get dark, had my headlamp, and I reached a point where I was like, I kind of went down past a spot where I was supposed to turn off. And I was, didn't really have much in the way of cell service. So I, had to hope for the best. And I sent a text message to a friend and told him to go get Rob. And I gave him a rough description of where on this mountain that I was. And then about 20 minutes, he's like, okay, I'll tell Rob. And then like 20 minutes later, I see like a headlamp just kind of like floating. It looked like a ghost or a bird that was like flying up the mountain, and he knew exactly where I was. And then we had a lovely evening together, and it was a good laugh, and we did a lot of climbing adventures together. And I think fondly on those days, Rob, for what it's worth.
Can I get a book?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Help yourself. Just keep an eye on the cord so that you don't trip over anything, but help yourself. Okay? I love you, sweetie. But yeah, it's don't forget to eat your cat food. Yeah, there's and we also drove cross country more than a couple times back in the day, and we watched like the entirety of Always Sunny on those cross country climbing trips. And so we had at one point where we could kind of bye sweetie pie, where we could spit lines from Always Sunny back and forth, and really the funniest episode, even as horrific and depraved as it kind of was, Frank's Little Beauties. These people just they're totally not responding to the pageantry at all. So yeah, hopefully everybody can respond to the pageantry. Let me read a couple of these chats here because I got off topic ranting about bacon. Secret Noise is in trouble if bacon causes cancer. Fair enough. If Bellino's Bounty says if bacon was as bad as they claimed it was, I think most of us would have passed a long while ago. Amen. Bacon makes chicken edible. I don't like it on cheeseburgers. Interesting. Bacon and chicken. I like bacon. One of the places that since I started making my own bacon, one of the things that I have done with it is screw it up and basically make bacon that was like way too salty or way too peppery. And then I kind of stopped curing my own bacon because I was selling pork for everyone else, and my own freezer was like, I didn't have any of my own bacon. And then by the time I got another pig done this past fall, I had to go ahead and like they're doing me a favor. I had my processor, the guy that I use to do the pork that I'm selling, that my butcher, I had him do the curing and all that stuff because I just didn't have the time to go through all of that. Although this year I'm going to do, I don't want to call it a class. I have a friend, my friend Kent, who put in half of the stuff in the barn and like rebuilt and revitalized that structure this past fall. He put in a cool bot. I don't know if you guys know what a cool bot is, but basically it is a cooler that it's like an electrical device that talks to the thermometer and the sensor on an air conditioner so that you can put an air conditioner in a insulated box basically and then turn the air conditioner on and the sensor will the coolbot tells the sensor that it's actually still hot in here and so it just keeps running the air conditioner and it allows you to oh sweet John Lightfoot there has a coolbot awesome yeah so I got my first one. I had a full commercial setup that you could hang like probably 3 to 5 cows and maybe 10 hogs in there all at once. Like it's a big, the butcher shop, the cooler there, it's a big cooler. But the cost to run that with the, with the Freon unit, it was just absolutely outrageous. So I basically turned off the cooler, which was the very big room, and then there's a walk-in freezer, and that walk-in freezer, because it's beautifully insulated and the door closes and it's really nice and airtight, I had my buddy Kent put a cool bot in there for me, and he did all of that. We're bartering where I'm growing out a pig for him and then I'm going to show him how to, take it apart and we're going to butcher it and use the cool bot because basically the way I think about it, my little walk-in freezer, now my cool bot, that's big enough for like 2 pigs. And I don't intend to be doing butchering for other people at scale. So having a cool bot is enough that I can do 1 or 2 pigs. And then when I get the pigs out of there and they're cut up, I can put them in the chest freezers that I have in the shop. And then, we can use the little CoolBot area. We use that for curing and getting to do get back to making bacon, which is a lot of fun. But as I was starting to say, a lot of the bacon that I've screwed up when it's too salty or spicy, it works really good if you put it in potatoes or basically treat it like it's seasoning. And then that kind of draws some of the extreme flavors out of it. And then it all kind of balances out. You got to just choose the right dish for the right kind of bacon. Rob says I use Frank Reynolds money. Well, I appreciate that seriously. So yeah, Lightfoot's got a cool bot. Ian Harris loves cool bots, and yeah, I've been really impressed with because like it was costing $800 to $900 a month when I was butchering commercially here. And I just didn't have enough time doing that part-time to put enough volume through to where I was making $800 to $900 to be able to put into keeping the coolers on. So it was just like an expensive hobby at that point. So it made more sense to sell some of the big equipment that was necessary for the commercial side of things and then go to hand tools for butchering. Because if you're just butchering 1 pig for your friend or your family, like you can do that stuff with a hand saw and this way, yeah, this shoulder. Sorry, left and right is confusing. What the heck? This guy here, the meat cleaver. That thing is, you can almost shave your arm with that meat cleaver, but I didn't have to use it previously because I had a big Hobart bandsaw. And it was really cool having all that stuff. It was really cool learning how to, run a butcher shop, how to clean and take apart all the equipment, how to process and make different cuts in different ways. All that was really useful. But in terms of having all that equipment in there, it just kind of loses its value when it just sits, and it does a whole lot of sitting. So it made sense for me to sell it. And the guy who bought all of my butcher equipment that I sold, like the power saws, I had a big power saw and a big grinder, and the grinder actually was from like the 1940s. So apparently the guy who ran the butcher shop before me, the previous owner here, he probably got it used from somebody who may have got it used from somebody who got it used from somebody. And those Hobarts, they go forever. And basically when I sold it to my buddy and my butcher, he had to call the technician, and the guy had to like go look up parts, because that was kind of like the big hiccup, because it needed some bearings somewhere in there. And he was like, yeah, they don't make any of this stuff anymore. This stuff was like from the 1950s, but they were able to fix it and figure it all out, and they got it going. And so now it's got a new life at a butcher shop where it's getting used like big time. And so I'm super happy about that. Lightfoot says, we have a 40 by 40 building with only one tiny window in a 10 by 10 cold room. R54 exterior walls, R30 interior, uses almost no power. Yeah, that sounds really good. I've been real happy with the power consumption on mine, because I ran it even into the winter just to see, and it used very little power. So, I mean, the commercial walk-in freezer, it came from a Pizza Hut that went out of business when they stole Pizza Hut from us. So it's very well insulated, and that works really good. And it'll do everything that I need it to do. And then the freezer stuff, I can just use chest freezers for that. So yeah, that's pretty bitchin'. I'm excited about it. So listen, folks, I got 10 of you here. I really expect and appreciate Lightfoot says we're off grid, so it's got to be insulated. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The whole power thing is a very dicey. Well, it's a different ball of wax. That adds an entirely different component to what you're doing. Because like my barn, for example, I don't have heat in there. It's not temperature controlled. It's not insulated. I mean, like when I turn the lights on in the barn and I walk down to the pasture, like you can see the lights coming out of the cracks in the barn. But it having power down there and having light down there, having the ability to kind of heat my water area, and having a little pump house there so that I don't have everything freeze up, which over the weekend here, where it's going to be, getting up to a high of like 10 degrees and down to like -10, and it's going to do that for a few days in a row, we would be so frozen that would be it for the rest of the winter. And I'd be carrying buckets from now until March, because we're not going to get a stretch of warm weather. Like if that faucet were to freeze up, we're not going to get a long enough stretch of weather to thaw that out. You might get a few days here and there where it's like 32, 34, but that's not going to touch when it's all the way frozen solid. And I've done a whole bunch of different things and messed around with it, but the pump house was real nice. Rob says, time to move down to Virginia with me. I've thought about it. I'm open to it. It's like timing wise right now, it's tough because, with the kids and having kids with two sets of parents, that is a little complicated in making a move that way. But it is definitely something that I've thought about. I fantasize, frankly, about living someplace where I don't have to deal with this kind of weather. Although the cold isn't really the problem. It's going back and forth from the cold to the warm. That's the part where it's just like, I don't much care for that. But the better the infrastructure gets, the less hateful the cold weather gets too. So there's some, there's pros and cons to it. But there's different things that I think about, and I would be, I'm definitely open to the possibility of this not being my forever home or farm or whatever. And I think that a lot of what I've learned here, I could bring somewhere else and start over again and regain in a much shorter, like for example, let's say I have 10 years in the bag here, I could go somewhere else and get to pretty much where I am after 10 years here, get there in a new place, in maybe 2 or 3 years, Yeah, good point. Like, you can dress for the cold. It just, there again, though, dressing for the cold, it takes like 20 minutes, half an hour to get ready and get out the door. And then it's like, once you're out the door, then it's like, oh, damn it, I forgot something in the kitchen. And I don't want to go get undressed, take my boots off. And I also don't want to track snow in the kitchen. And then it's just like, you got to yell for somebody to get out of bed or like get off the couch or put the baby down to come over and bring me this thing that I forgot in the kitchen. You know, it's kind of, I'm sure you know, it's a process, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see. This winter, thank God, has gone pretty fast so far, and I am getting real close to my first sow. Actually, she's a gilt farrowing. She doesn't have full on milk coming in, but she's starting to express a little bit of, I think, whatever the exudate. I don't know if it's colostrum. I don't know exactly what it is. The, you know, kind of the precursor to the milk as it's starting to let down. So I think, and they always do this whenever there's like a weather change. They're like, oh, weather's changing, dropping my babies now. I think it was last year, my oldest sow had huge litter of pigs the coldest night of the year. It was below zero. Wouldn't surprise me if you know, the one that's on the bubble here, if she does that the same as well. We were in Maryland a couple years. We came home because it was too hot. Yeah, the humidity in the Mid Atlantic is a bit difficult. Although in the Appalachian Mountains, like Western Virginia, as opposed to West Virginia, but the western part of the state of Virginia, I mean, I actually like West Virginia too. Magnificent state. But Western Virginia, I've spent some time down there, like Independence, you know, pretty much in the southwestern corner of the state of Virginia. And I've been down there in like kind of the May, June time of year. And it, you know, it's hot, but it's better. It's more bearable. You know, the humidity is a little bit less hateful. And the funny thing is, in New Hampshire, in the summer times, like I would say probably 70%, maybe 75% of the time, out here the humidity is like through the roof. It's just incredibly humid and uncomfortable. I don't like it at all. When I was in upstate New York, where I grew up as a kid, we would get like these Canadian high pressure systems. I remember I used to listen to the weather radio because I was a geek and I grew up in a house that didn't have a television. So I would listen to the weather radio and I would hear like, oh, this is what's, excuse me, gotta sneeze. I'd hear this is what's going on, or this is what's going to be coming up. And they would always be talking about, oh, the Canadian high pressure, we're going to have thunderstorms. And then like high pressure and cooler temps are going to come in behind that. And you really got a sense for the cyclic nature of the weather and how that moved. And it was really cool. I did not appreciate enough the weather in upstate New York. It is uniquely 4 seasons, low humidity, minimal amount of extremes that are dangerous in terms of the weather, and agriculturally, I would say ideal, because I think having 4 seasons does help, and having snow on the ground for a couple of months out of the year, that helps with, you know, getting some of the, I believe, nitrogen back into the soil. Forgive me if I'm mistaken. Rob, you might know about that better than I do. But I've heard from people who are like big into planting hay and doing stuff like that, that talk about kind of what a big deal it is if you get good, you know, good snowfall instead of just cold weather, but how much of a difference that the snow makes in terms of everything kind of coming to fruition, literally in the pasture in the coming year. Hey, Chris. So different streaming setup, so I have to kind of check my phone here. Yeah, Lightfoot says we were a mile or 2 off the top of the bay, very humid, totally. And Rob says, nice place. Our 5 acres is just outside Sperryville. That sounds really familiar. 15-minute walk from Old Rag and the Shenandoah Park. Oh man, I gotta come see you. That sounds awesome. I love the Shenandoah area. It's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's one of those places like driving through the Shenandoah, like the Shenandoah Parkway or the Blue Ridge Parkway. My idiot cat is trying to like claw her way through the screen. And sorry, rabbit trail, squirrel. You dummy! I'm not letting you in. Go out in the barn where you belong. Stop trying to panhandle. Yeah, the Blue Ridge Parkway, driving through there and like seeing the Appalachian farms out there, the Skyline Drive. Thank you. Yes, that's as it's called. It's there's something about it it's it's nostalgic. It's like so beautiful and old in a way and lost to time that it hurts. Where it's like I can feel a piece of like what I want to be and what I grew up admiring and idealizing as like this is like it. This is peak American farming like culture. And this is what I want. Like this is how like everybody should have a chance to grow up in this type of area where you have an old barn and rolling hills and there's some animals out here and animals out there and some big rocks in the pasture and you can climb on them and go build a tree fort and kind of that sort of ethos. And it's beautiful, but it's so beautiful that it kind of hurts driving through there. And there's a little element of that, I would even say, in other, I mean, definitely in upstate New York and even a little bit in Vermont. Nothing against New Hampshire. I love New Hampshire as much as I'm supposed to since I live here. But I would say it's just it's a very utilitarian aesthetic here in the state. It's a utilitarian aesthetic. It's very skeletal. It's not got much going for it in the looks department. Not saying that there aren't pretty areas, but I mean just generally speaking, that's kind of my impression. It's a tough place to grow crops with our inch of topsoil on like acres and acres of rocky soil. I lucked out. My place is better than average, and there's some real nice places down by the Connecticut River where it's all kind of that like Piedmont floodplain down by the Connecticut River, and it's just beautiful. Gets awful muddy, anytime there's rain or mud season or anything like that, but still, it's nice having good pasture. Anyhow, folks, it is. I have overstayed my welcome. I apologize for the fact that I have to cut this off a little early. Tomorrow, for anybody who has not been here, I'm going to link and post and try to coordinate so that everybody is able to see the live stream. I'm going live on Zeb Boykin's channel. Some of you may know of him. He's a streamer out of South Carolina, talks politics and culture, and he's a little spicy, but former Marine and an upstanding young guy. He's a straight shooter, and I found him right around the time that the Charlie Kirk incident occurred, and I liked his analysis on things and his ability to kind of separate the signal from the noise. And so we've developed a little bit of a professional friendship, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to have a good conversation tomorrow together, and I'll get to meet some of his audience, and maybe you guys, if you're able, can hop in there. I really appreciate everybody being patient with this suboptimal setup. I'm going to try to keep working on this and get it dialed in. Eventually, we'll figure out the 4K and all that jazz. But for now, I think I am going to call it there. Silverhearts Homestead, just found your channel today. I've been watching all your videos. Oh, thank you. That's awesome. I really appreciate hearing that. Makes me so happy to hear, because I go through my analytics on my YouTube Studio app, and I'm trying to see, okay, which videos are people watching, but it's hard to go through and really know who's getting what out of which videos. So Good to meet you. I appreciate you coming in for the live stream. I really like the live streams because there's no editing. That's the principal reason. And I also like being able to just talk directly with folks and make friends and kind of get feedback from you guys. So typically what we do is we'll do at least one live stream a week, which is usually the Friday night farm stream, and that's 9:30 p.m. Eastern. That's kind of the baseline. And then tomorrow I got a special live stream, so at 12 o'clock noon. So I may not be going live tomorrow night since I'm gonna have that. And usually Zeb's shows, they go for between 1 and 2 hours, so it should be in a reasonable amount of depth. But probably with the fact that the weather is not great up here, I'll have opportunity to maybe do another stream at some point before, either Sunday or Monday. And we'll get a chance to catch up with you guys and talk more then. All right. If you're not subscribed to the channel at this point, I would love it if you would do that and join us here. That way we can help build our channel, make America farmers again, and, continue with this mission of revitalizing American culture by rebuilding the American family farm, because that's kind of at the heart of everything what we're doing. And I think there's a need for it. So, all right, gang, that's it. I'm going to cut the stream here. If I can figure out how to get out of here without kicking over my tripods and all that jazz. Appreciate everybody coming. Thank you. Super chat, Rob, much appreciated. Everybody else showing up, channel members, really appreciate. Mr. Lightfoot, you're also our, let's say, wait a minute. Does this mean, yeah, I think you're my only channel member still. I don't think I've gotten any. Yes, you're my only channel member, but I do have memberships available. I should have said that earlier. We do have channel memberships available. So right now I'm kind of trying to sort out the perks and the content and stuff like that. But, there's some opportunities to get more like one-on-one Q&A type of stuff. If there's things you want to talk about or whatever, it's always appreciated, because a little bit of support that we have, both, I mean, just people showing up and watching, but then the memberships, that's going to make it as we build the channel so that we can do more of this and spend more time chewing the fat with you guys. So anyways, good night, stay warm, and hopefully we'll see you guys tomorrow, and drop a comment if you got anything to add that we forgot here. So yeah, see you guys.